Welcome to the Kingmakers IAS Academy 5 editorials of the week. This 5 editorials of the week will be getting you all the stock points from the important editorial which came in the newspaper in the past week. I'm Madhavi presenting you this. So let's get started with the topics of the discussion. We have 5 important topics from the newspaper throughout this week. It will be dealing with the most important topic of bad bank, end of doing business ranking, AUKUS, judicial selection process, disease surveillance system. So let's get started with the topic. The first is, what is the need for bad bank? In the Sunday's newspaper, last Sunday, there was a discussion about bad bank. There was a detail about bad bank. I was getting all the points from that particular editorial. It was not editorial, it was an explanation paper. And there was an editorial which also came in Tuesday's newspaper, which was detailing and critically analyzing this bad bank. So this bad bank is very important as it is there in the General Studies 3, because there is a topic, Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment. This topic is very important because of that. The Union Cabinet on Wednesday actually approved a rupees 30,600 crore, a backstop facility for guaranteeing securities to be issued by the National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited, the so-called bad bank. So the bad bank is technically called as National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited. So please ensure that in your mains answer writing, you're using this word and not the bad bank. And this bad bank on your body you can use, but when you're introducing it, please ensure that you tell them that this is the name of this bank. So bad bank, yes, National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited is one created. So let's talk about a background of this. So NARCL will be called as bad bank. So this NARCL will actually get the bad loans from the normal PSU, PSB, that is public sector banks like State Bank. The bad loans from this public sector banks will be sold to this NARCL. And this NARCL will actually look into the process of recovering the money from these bad loans. But PSBs, now having sold the loan to the NARCL, will be relieved of the burden of resolving this loan and will be only concentrating on the credit and deposit and other banking works. So this is the scenario. And what is this NPA? NPA is nothing but a loan which has not been recovered and which has not been paid back from the borrower, and the delay in this paying back or not paying back has been more than 90 days. So there is a delay in the paying back of the loans, and this loan now have been categorized as NPA, that is non-performing asset. And why is it called as an asset? Because the bank has lent that particular money to the borrower, and this money can anyway come back to this bank. So it is called an asset. So the loan is called as an asset for a bank. But now it is a non-performing asset since the loan is not being paid back and it is not being recovered also. So this bad bank is coming into picture to recover the money from this loans. So those loans are now called as NPAs. So that is the scenario behind this NPA and the bad bank. Let's talk about the stock points from the editorial. Points to be noted. A bad bank is a financial entity set up to acquire NPAs, non-performing assets from banks and resolve them. 51% owned by public sector banks. So this point actually differentiates this bad bank from the normal ARC that was the earlier there to resolve this NPA, that is Asset Reconstruction Company. This is actually a private owned companies. Say Reliance have an asset reconstruction company, so they will buy the loans which are not recovered from the bank, and they will resolve the loans and pay back the bank about some amount from that particular loan. So because say for example Madhavi had got a loan of say for example 500 crore, or Madhavi's company had bought 500 crore from SBI, I have not paid back the money more than 90 days. So SBI has categorized this 500 crore as NPA, and it has sold to Reliance ARC, that is Reliance Asset Reconstruction Company, and Reliance will come to my house and recover the money through means of assets or a company or land or something. And then the recovered money will be paid back to this SBI. Not the whole money they will pay back. They will retain some of the money for their profit and for their operations, and they will pay back this SBI. So the SBI, if it is giving 500 crore, it will not be able to recover 500 crore as a whole, but it will be almost able to recover 30% or 40% or 50% of the 500 crore from this Madhavi or Madhavi company. So this is the scenario. Now bad bank is doing the role of ARC. Since this bad bank is owned by public sector banks, and it also has a government guarantee. So this guarantee is through the government. So it is having a guarantee from the government because government is providing this 30,600 crore backstop facility. So when the money, that is 500 crore, is not being able to recover by this bad bank, the government will provide provide that particular shortfall. That is the money which are not recovered. That shortfall will be provided by the bank from this lump sum amount, that is 30,600 crore. Say 500 crore Madhavi's loan, the bad bank is able to recover only, say for example, 260 crore. The remaining amount will be the shortfall. That is 500 minus 260 crore will be the shortfall, and then that money will be provided by the government through this backstop facility. So this is what you have to know. And it takes over the fully provisioned stressed assets of about 90,000 crore in the first phase. So the bad bank's first phase, it will take 500 crore loans, that is a loan which is having a value of more than 500 crore. Totally 90,000 crore of this bad loans will be taken by this bad bank, and this is the first phase of resolution of this particular bad loans. So NARCL is taking up 90,000 crore worth of bad loans, where each individual loan will be having a value of more than rupees 500 crore. This will be resolved by this NARCL. What is this fully provisioned stressed assets? Fully provisioned stressed assets means the money that is given as a loan has not been coming back. So the bank will actually provision the loan. Say for example, if it is a 500 crore loan, the bank, since it is knowing that it is not coming back, it will have X crore of amount as a provision for this 500 crore which is not coming back. So the bank has set certain amount, okay, kept certain amount to actually compensate this particular loan which is not coming back. That is called fully provisioned stressed assets. This fully provisioned stressed asset is the one which is given to the bad bank for resolution in the first phase. Why you need to give such a loan to the bad bank? It is already fully provisioned. This is the criticism that is the author is giving in the next editorial. Let's talk about the editorial that point when that editorial is coming, but I'll just give you a hint to that particular editorial as well when I'm discussing here. And a 15% cash payment to the banks based on the valuation, and the rest will be given as a security receipts. Friends, you have to know, say for example, if X plus Y is the loan amount, X is the recovered money, and Y is the shortfall money, say for example. This you have to know. So mostly X will only be recovered, Y will remain as a shortfall. This Y shortfall will be provided by the government. That is why the backstop facility is there. Say for example, in this X plus Y amount, X plus Y amount will be divided as 15% cash and 85% as security receipts. Security receipts means it can be equity or a bond or a debenture. So this money will be categorized as 15% cash and 85% security. So 15% cash and 85% security is given to the NARCL. The NARCL will actually pay the bank for this X plus Y loan, which it is buying from this bank in 15% cash and 85% security. So bank will sell the loan of X plus Y amount to NARCL in 15% cash and 85% security. And then it will try to recover the money from this bad loan, but it will be able to recover only, say for example, X amount, but it will not be able to recover Y amount. So Y amount will be a shortfall and X amount is the recovered money. So Y, which is a shortfall, will be reimbursed by the government from the rupees 30,600 crore backstop facility. To assist the NARCL, there is something more is created. A public and private bank together would set up an Indian Debt Resolution Company Limited. So it is not the NARCL which is resolving the loan, bad loan. It is the IDRCL which will have the resolution professionals who will actually resolve these loans. That would manage the acquired assets and try to improve their value for final resolution. And on completion of resolution, the balance 85% of value being held as security reserves will be given to the bank. So NPAs, that is the bad loans which are there, which is bought by the NARCL, will be given to the IDRCL. IDRCL will try to recover the loan. Then it will pay back the bank of the 85% security receipts, which it bought from the banks. So this 85% receipts will be paid after recovering the loan. How actually the ARCs will be recovering loan? See, Madhavi have got a loan. She is running a ABC company. So ABC company may be owning a land. So this land will be bought by this IDRCL and it will be sold to some person or many persons in bit by bit. And this money which is recovered from selling the land of this ABC company will be used to pay back the loan that the ABC company got. So that this is how actually the IDRCL will try to resolve this resolution of that particular loan. There is a lots of things into it. Okay, ABC company may own land or any other assets where those assets will be sold, or even the company will be managed and run by IDRCL to improve the income of or the revenue of this ABC company, and that revenue will be helped to recover the loan of this ABC company itself. So like this, there is a various strategy which the IDRCL will use to actually pay back the loan that the ABC company has bought. So this is how the resolution will happen. The guarantee which will be valid for 5 years would be invoked either at the time of the resolution or liquidation to cover the shortfall, and it helps lend credibility to the resolution process and provides for contingency buffers. As I told you, that if there is a shortfall in the money that is recovered from the loans, bad loans, there will be this guarantee will be used. So this guarantee will be invoked only if after the resolution of this bad loan, so that there is a credibility to the resolution process, and it also provides a contingency, that is whenever some emergency, that is a shortfall has happened, this guarantee will actually be coming into picture and help reduce the burden of the company, banks as well as the company. Union government's guarantee will also enhance liquidity of these receipts. Liquidity of these receipts, because the receipts, which is the loan, which is actually the amount to be recovered, is the receipts. So whenever the government is giving guarantee to this receipts, somebody will come and buy it. Only when somebody is coming and buying it, the bank will able to recover money from that particular receipts. So the government's guarantee actually providing liquidity to this receipt. Liquidity means here is the receipts will be bought by somebody. So the receipts will be sold and there will be money which is recovered from this receipts, which actually recovers the loans and that is paid back to the PSBs by these bad banks. So this you have to know. Also, given that there would be a pool of asset, it is likely that realization of value in many cases would exceed the acquisition cost, obviating the need to draw down on the guarantee. Actually, here our government is too optimistic, is what the author is saying. Why it is too optimistic? They are saying that this NPA, which I call it X plus Y amount of money, when it is actually sold or liquidated in the form of receipts, they're saying that they will recover more amount than the cost of the recovery itself. So this is too optimistic is what the author is saying in the next editorial. Why? Because this X plus Y may not be bought by any person because this pandemic situation has not increased the investment and it has uh, made many risk averse. That is, they are not taking any risk of buying government securities or whatever be government guaranteed securities. Though here government guaranteed securities receipts is given to recover this bad loan, but there is no player who is actually ready to buy it. But government is saying there will be more realization is coming. But actually, you have to know, even when Air India or any other company which is disinvested, nobody came to buy it. And the money is not coming from those Air India or other shares of where the PSUs were converted into, where PSU share, some of the shares from the PSU actually sold. So this is one scenario you have to understand. In a bid to disincentivize delay in resolution, the government has also proposed that the NARCL pay a guarantee fee to the center, which would increase with the passage of time. Here, NARCL will pay the bank and the center when there is a delay in the resolution of the process. This is to ensure that NARCL doing the resolution on time. So to disincentivize delay, the government has also proposed that the NARCL pay a guarantee fee to the center, which would increase with the passage of time. So as and when NARCL is delaying too much, accordingly to the delay of the time, the NARCL will be paying back to the center. What are the benefits of this bad bank? The cleaner balance sheet also makes it relatively easier for the lender to raise fresh capital if required. This you have to understand. So I have recovered X plus Y, X amount from the X plus Y loan. So X amount is there with the bank now. So X amount will now be loaned or lent to any new startups or any new fresh entrepreneurs. So new entrepreneurs will start emerging when the bank is able to provide a fresh capital from the recovered money from those bad loans. So this will raise fresh capital. This will actually increase the investment, and this will actually improve the employment, industry, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. Since when investment is increasing or capital is increasing, there will be lots of spur in the economy. So this is the benefit of the bad bank. What are the challenges? Laxity on the part of bankers in assessing risk and thus creating fresh dodgy loans. Here, the bank may actually become lazy and they may become lethargic and see that they will be providing loans to anybody coming and asking for a loan, and they will not scrutinize their profile. When they are not scrutinizing their profile properly, it is a great risk because the person who are getting the loan from this bank may not pay back. So this is the problem where the bank may get laxity because there is something called as bad bank. So they will see, they will relax and say, yes, there is a bad bank who will take care of this bad loan. So let's loan it to anybody who is coming and asking. So this is how the bank may become relaxed, and this will create a moral hazard. the end game. So there is another editorial which critically analyzed this particular bad bank. I've already shared all those points when I was detailing about the bad bank. Let's just jot down all those points now. First phase NPAs are all taken or already fully provisioned. So the first phase NPA which is taken by this bad bank is already fully provisioned. So these NPAs need not be sold to the NARCL, and NARCL need not put in pressure to actually recover loans. So that is not needed at all. Expedite the process of resolution, which delayed even when IBC is there. IBC, which is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, is already there. So why need a bad bank? Bad bank actually will expedite the process of resolution. I already told you, no, where the NARCL will have to compensate and provide a fee if it is delaying the resolution. So such a strict procedure is there for resolution in a bad bank. Comparing to IBC, it is what the author is saying. So this is a positive point. Though I've told you first point as a negative about the bad bank, the second point is a positive about the bad bank, saying that it will expedite or increase the speed of the process of resolution comparing to this IBC, which is a dispute resolution mechanism. So dispute IBC, you can ask me, there is a bad bank, there is an IBC, why, how IBC is different from this bad bank? IBC is a dispute resolution mechanism, while bad bank is a institution which actually helps to recover the bad loans. So this is different, though it may have actually converged at a point that it is working on the bad loans, but it has a different process of resolving this problem. So this you have to know. It will also free up the bank personnel to focus on faltering credit growth and spur the economy. So this is one thing you have to know. Bank personnel now will be relieved because there is no NPAs now. NPAs all sold to bad bank, and now they will concentrate on increasing the credit growth, that is loaning new players and also increasing the economic growth. But this bad bank and the government is very optimistic about the bad bank. But let's see how the market is behaving when this bad bank is actually working. Private ARCs are hesitant in extracting values from this bad loan owing to large size. As I told you, in the first phase, the bad bank will take up a loan which is having a worth of 500 crore and more, which is actually a large sized loan or big ticket loans. But earlier, this private ARC is already have not taken such a loan because it is very large, and private ARC are hesitant to resolve such a loans. How come bad bank can actually resolve this loan? This is the question that the author is asking here. The caliber of professional must actually outdo private players in order to resolve such a loan. Already private IRC is there. Private ARC said, no, we will not be able to resolve such a big ticket loans. But now bad bank is trying to do it. Whether it will succeed in doing it, in order to succeed, what it needs a greater caliber of professionals. Whether it has such caliber of professionals, let's see. Moral hazard. Yes, when there is something called as bad bank, the bank will not do something properly on reducing its NPA. It will start giving loans to all the people who are coming and asking for a loan, and not properly scrutinize the profile of the person who are getting the loans from the bank. So this will create a moral hazard. Since bad bank is there, the banks will become lax and they will become lethargic, is what the author is criticizing. And the last point is Bank for International Settlements. This is an international organization which has all the banks of various countries from across the world is actually have clubbed together as a Bank for International Settlements. This, in its working paper on bad bank resolutions and bank lending, has found that bad bank segregations are effective in cleaning up balance sheets and promoting bank lending. So they said bad bank is one important policy move which will actually help in resolving of such a bad loans. But it also said that only if they combine recapitalization with asset segregation. So recapitalization of the banks, that is providing lots of capital for the banks to increase their credit system, and the banks is actually able to lend more, will actually help along with this bad bank resolution process, is what the Bank for International Settlement has said. This, after studying 15 European banking systems from 2000 to 2016, has said that recapitalization plus asset segregation will actually help along with this bad bank resolution process. So this you have to understand. So the Bank for International Settlement is said that this bad bank is one good move. So in the critical analysis, you have to give positive as well as negative points. Then coming to the next editorial, the end of doing business ranking. This is important because it is there in GS2, the important topic, important international institutions, agencies, and fora, their structure and mandate. So let's get into the stock points from this particular editorial. The premise is World Bank scrapped ease of doing business ranking and doing business report. So World Bank, an important international institution, is coming up with a report, doing business report and ease of doing business ranking. In this ranking, it will categorize all the countries in different ranks based on the facilities it is provided for establishing businesses and running businesses, and also the supply chain, the whole supply chain. So say for example, when an entrepreneur wants to start a business, he needs an approval, he needs a land, he needs the rules to be followed, and he needs the resolution from the judiciary system if there is any dispute. So all these facilities which is required for a business to be flourishing has to be there in a country. Only if the country is having such a facilities, there will be more businesses established there and running. This will in turn create a scenario where more investments will come, lots of employment, infrastructure, and everything will be created. This will it will increase the economic growth. So World Bank actually ranks all the world countries in this doing business report. What are the points to be noted? Why did the World Bank scrap it? Let's analyze one by one. Ethical issues were flagged in 2018 and 2020 edition because an ex-CEO accused of having pressured the internal team to falsely boost China's rank by doctoring the underlying data. So China was able to influence the data through the ex-CEO. I will not name it, though the particular editorial have given the name. I will not name it, and you may not. You also, I will suggest that don't name such any person in your answer writing, and just mention that it's an ex-CEO of World Bank. They have done some ethical mishaps in this particular report, wherein the China's rank has been boosted. So this is one problem. And countries signal market-friendly policies to attract foreign investments. So the country will say, CC, we are in this first top 10 rank or top 100 rank of this doing business report. And thereby they will tell, you can actually come and invest here. We are providing lots of facilities. CC, our doing business ranking is higher. And we are friendly, having a market-friendly policies. So investors and entrepreneurs will see that this company is having lots of ease of doing business, and they will come and invest and start a business there. So countries are signaling, so the investors and entrepreneurs are coming and establishing their businesses there. Some countries do use their political heft to improve their rank, because investors will come only if their ranking in the ease of doing business will be high. Some countries are intentionally manipulating the data, or they will influence the employees of this ease of doing business report, and they will use their political heft to improve their rank and polish their international image and sway public opinion domestically also. Even in Indian government or any other country's government, they use this ease of doing business ranking to say that, see, we are having such facilities for the investors, and so we are creating lots of employment, and or make in India or make in China is flourishing. So like this, they are showing their international image, and also they are swaying public opinion. The ease of doing business reinforces simplicity of rules, secure property rights with minimal state intervention as a precondition for free market to flourish. So this one important point which you will use for critically analyzing. What is this? The ease of doing business will actually give a greater rank when you have a simplicity of rules, when you have a secure property rights. When you have a simplicity of rules, sometimes some government actually can dilute the rules. Say the rules for labor laws, or rules for safety of the industry, or rules for environment, reducing the environment damage. So these rules may be diluted in the name of making it simple. That will actually improve the ranking in the ease of doing business. But whether improving the ranking will actually help the country or will actually degrade the country's situation, it will actually degrade the country's situation. And it is the ease of doing business ranking is also reinforcing securing property rights, secure property rights. So when a country is having secure property rights and minimal state intervention and a free market, only then ease of doing business ranking will improve. So the government will actually have this idea that we have to provide secure property rights. So this ease of doing business is indirectly forcing a country to have such a secure property rights and free market. As you all know, there is a two kind of idea: capitalistic idea of free market and socialistic idea of state controlled market. We have a balance of both, but certain countries don't have a balance of both. Either they are capitalistic and socialistic, like USA capitalistic and China socialistic. But you have to see that this ease of doing business is promoting a free market idea, which is capitalistic idea. This is again a biased ranking, which every countries may not follow. So this is again one criticism that the author wants to give. And information for index are calculated as per the statute. That is only based on the theoretical law, information is taken and not as per practice. So this is one problem. And this data is only taken from a selected city. Say for example, in India, this data is only taken from Mumbai and Delhi. So Mumbai and Delhi only, if they are having ease of doing business, the whole ease of doing business scenario of India will be shown as higher. But ease of doing business may not be in Chennai, may not be in Bangalore, may not be in Hyderabad. So the selecting cities and taking data only from them and taking data only from the theoretical law actually will not show the real scenario of what is the ease of doing business facility provided by India. And also it is taken only from a large firms. What about India, which is having a MSME, which is having a diverse growth of MSME, diverse growth of select cities, and diversity in the growth of cities and large firms and MSMEs is there. Even there is 90% which is informal and unorganized. So taking data only from the large firm will not reflect the scenario of India. And India's position from 130 to 140 till 2014 zoomed to 63rd position in 2019 to 20 showcases success of Make in India. Yes, this improvement in the ease of doing business actually is showcased as a success of the Make in India. But actually the scenario is the manufacturing contribution to GDP never been achieved as 25% from 16 to 17%, and no 100 million additional jobs were created, which was actually the purpose of Make in India. So the author is saying why there is a disconnect between the ranking, which is 63rd, which is an improvement from 130 to 140, but there is no success of improvement in the manufacturing contribution to GDP and increase in the number of jobs which has to be created. So there is a disconnect between ranking and economic outcomes, which the author wants to say. And either the theory could be suspect or data and measurement could be faulty is what the author wants to say. China succeeded, but no clarity on property rights were there. As I said, this ease of doing business is reinforcing to have a secure property rights. But China is not having property rights, but still they are having a higher rank. And also there is lots of businesses which are actually coming and establishing in China. This is happening because they are having lots of economic incentives given to their domestic sectors. So that is actually improving the scenario of China. This is what the author wants to criticize the methodology and the data calculations of this ease of doing business ranking. When ease of doing business ranking actually tuned their methodology, Chile's rank actually went down. This actually created a political problem wherein that time only Chile's government was changed from one idea of government to another idea of government. A socialistic government came. So socialistic government was criticized for saying that your rank in the ease of doing business has gone down. But World Bank chief actually apologized to that. No, Chile hasn't done anything. New government has not done anything. But we have tuned some methodology in the ease of doing business, which actually changed the Chile's rank. This is one scenario where there can be a political implication. So actually author is also saying this is one problem which the ease of doing business is having. And to boost ease of doing business ranking, country whittle down their labor norms and their enforcement and go close to pre-market ideal of hire and fire policy. Critical safety regulations are also diluted, which I've already discussed. And data irregularities are there in the ease of doing business ranking. Data irregularities may be the one which is manipulated intentionally, or there can be data irregularities because the data may not be proper on the because the one who's collecting may not be having a proper methodology, or the one who is giving such a data is not having a proper methodology. Like India don't have proper data to give the World Bank, or World Bank is not properly calculating and using the data which is given by the India. So both the sides, data irregularities can happen. So this is again pushing the putting this end of doing business ranking is in a faulty manner. Then the big deal behind the ruckus over AUKUS is the next topic we will be discussing. This is because this is very important because in general studies too, we have a bilateral, regional and global groupings and agreement involving India and or affecting India's interest as one of the topic. So AUKUS, which is a trilateral security pact between Australia, UK and USA, is actually affecting India and its interest. So this editorial is very important. Let's see the premise. Australia, UK and US trilateral security pact was recently signed. What are the points to be noted? This security pact after signature will actually help Australia to get nuclear submarine propulsion and manufacturing technologies from UK and USA. And this you have to understand that Australia is the only country where UK and USA is giving this nuclear submarine propulsion and manufacturing technology. So this is important scenario which you have to note from in the international relation point of view. What are the benefits? Australia is able to strengthen the regional security architecture in Indo-Pacific using nuclear capabilities provided by UK and USA. I already told you in the last editorial, Indo-Pacific is a place which India and many other countries is having interest. Indo-Pacific has to be open, free and secure is what in the interest of all the countries which are having Indo-Pacific as their rim. So this in Australia having an interest in the security of the Indo-Pacific, when given such nuclear submarine propulsion from UK and USA, will able to strengthen the security in the Indo-Pacific area. This is one good for India also, because Indo-Pacific will now be secure when Australia is having the capability of nuclear deterrence. So China will be defended. China's aggression can be defended using the nuclear capabilities of Australia. It can be one good benefit that this AUKUS can provide India. India may get similar nuclear facilities from the two countries. So UK and USA can also provide India similar to what Australia has been given. Strengthen Quad, where USA and Australia are already there. So Quad is a quadrilateral initiative between USA, Australia, India, and Japan. Now, USA and Australia have already gone into a pact to provide nuclear submarine propulsion. This will strengthen the Quad, is what the author is saying. What are the drawbacks? France being kept away and also its submarine deal cancelled by Australia affected the relationship and support of AUKUS. France, which is an important country in the European Union, and now UK is not a part of European Union, has been kept away from this pact. France is even don't know what this AUKUS is being signed. France only knew very later, and also Australia had actually agreement with France to actually develop submarines. But now Australia cancelled the deal with the France and went to USA and had this deal of nuclear submarine manufacturing. This actually disappointed France, and France has shown this disappointment in various methods like stopping the diplomatic talks with Australia and the USA as well. So this one scenario is which creates a problem in the France. So AUKUS is not having a support from France as well as European Union, which is one scenario which is putting us in a tight rope. So India now have to support France or have to support UK, USA and Australia. So France is in one side and Australia, UK, US is on another side. So France is disappointed by Australia, and now we are in the middle, not knowing whom to support. Arms race may start as China may retaliate. So China is against this AUKUS, since AUKUS, as you know, is against China, which is aggressive in the Indo-Pacific area. So arms race may start since China will say, see, this Australia is having nuclear submarine. So we will also start having nuclear submarine. We will proliferate nuclear submarine and we will have a deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. China will say and start its arms race. So this Cold War in the Indo-Pacific area will be a problem, and this will affect the peace which is required in the Indo-Pacific area, and this will create militarization of Indo-Pacific area. This may add new dimension to Quad, which India is not ready for. This you have to know. As you know, Quad is not a security alliance. This Quad is only a cooperation between the four countries, India, Japan, USA and USA and Australia. But this Quad, if at all clubbed with this nuclear submarine propulsion technology of Australia and USA, this Quad may get the defense dimension. And now China will be seeing in the lens of AUKUS into this Quad. So China will see AUKUS plus Quad as an important threat. So this AUKUS plus Quad is what China will look into, and they will think this Quad is going along with AUKUS. But India is separating AUKUS and Quad. India is not clubbing this AUKUS pact and Quad together. Quad is only a cooperation. AUKUS is a security pact with the Australia, UK and USA. So this is what India is not yet ready for. So this of new dimension added to the Quad, India is not yet ready for, and India is not being discussed with also. So India is not ready for Quad plus given the nuclear dimension to it, nuclear deterrence to it. So India is not yet ready for it. India's preeminence in the Indian Ocean will get affected as Australia may engage more in Eastern Indian Ocean. So with this nuclear submarine propulsion technology, Australia may proliferate nuclear submarines in the Eastern Indian Ocean. So this may affect India because India don't want other countries to have more power in the Indo-Pacific area. So Australia, UK, USA now clubbing together in the security pact and militarizing the Indo-Pacific Ocean actually creates a turbulence in the water, which India is not inviting, and it is not promoting it. New Zealand don't support AUKUS and want nuclear free zone and more transparency. So New Zealand again is a country which is very near Australia. So this New Zealand is also want a nuclear free zone, and they don't want militarization of Indo-Pacific area. But this AUKUS is militarizing and creating a nuclear submarines in this particular area, which is not liked by the New Zealand. So this also you have to understand. Challenges. What are the challenges? Neither Quad is a security arrangement nor Malabar exercise is a naval alliance. Whether it will challenge China's militarization. You have to see another angle also. Quad is not a security arrangement. Malabar exercise is not a naval alliance. So the author is asking whether Quad and Malabar exercise will able to tackle China's aggression and militarization. This is one important angle you have to look into. Though we don't like Quad to be a security arrangement, but Quad has to be a security arrangement in order to be deterring this China. So this is one another scenario where some analysts are asking whether we are capable of enough into deterring China. Increase in defense outlays of Japan and Australia is another challenge. Since China is aggressive in the Indo-Pacific area, the defense budget of Japan and Australia is rising. This is one problem which the author is saying. UK is reinserting itself directly in Indo-Pacific, already a part of Five Eyes. So UK, I told you, this Australia, UK, USA is militarizing the Indo-Pacific area, which is not liked by India. And UK, which is having a issue because it is militarizing by capturing lots of islands like Diogo Grazia Island in Mauritius and lots of Seychelles Islands and all. UK is inserting itself, but and through this AUKUS Pact, it will come directly into the Indo-Pacific area, so and create a security problem in that particular area. And UK is also part of Five Eyes. This Five Eyes, FPEI, is a surveillance cooperation between Anglo-Saxon countries. Anglo-Saxon country includes Canada, USA, UK, France. So these countries actually is having a surveillance cooperation in the Indo-Pacific area. So UK is reinserting itself directly in the Indo-Pacific area, and it is already a part of Five Eyes. China's fastest growing fleet. So China's fastest growing fleets is also a threat in the Indo-Pacific area, you have to understand. And India, with only one indigenously built nuclear submarine technology, which is called INS Arihant, this is also having a problem. We already had INS Chakra on a lease from Russia, but we returned it back, and we have fewer conventional submarines and only one nuclear submarine, which is INS Arihant, which is very, very small. So whether it will actually challenge China's militarization, we do not know. What is the way forward? China's aggression needs greater naval deterrence. Either it may come through AUKUS or it may come through indigenous technology, submarine technology, which we built. So the author is saying we need some methods to deter China's aggression. We can have a pact with USA or France. So peace and stability of Indo-Pacific is very important scenario which we have to have. India should reach out to France to grab the deal cancelled by France. So these are the points which the author is saying. Let's move on to the next editorial. Judicial selection needs more than a tweak. This is important because in general studies too, we have this appointment to various constitutional posts. This editorial is talking about the judicial selection process and the analysis of the collegium system, which is the currently continuing process of selection of the judiciary and also the transfer of the judiciary judges. Let's talk about the judicial selection. So second judge's case. This second judge's case, 1993, is very important to know. You already know that judges are selected and appointed by the president along with Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges. In the second judge's case, it is mentioned that the advice of selection of the judges is concurring on the president. That is, it is binding on the president that whomever is selected by the Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges must be appointed by the president. But this was tried to be changed in this 99th constitutional amendment, which created this National Judicial Appointment Commission. So in this National Judicial Appointment Commission, there were equal number of judges and equal number of executive, which is the government. So this NJAC was the body to be appointing the judges. It will select the judges and it will appoint. But this 99th constitutional amendment, which was creating this NJAC, was scrapped by the judges or the judiciary in the 4th judge's case, which happened in 2015. So in this 4th judge's cases, this NJAC was dissolved and collegium, which was created in the 2nd judge's case as including Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges, will continue selecting and appointing the judges. So this is how you have to know the history of the appointment of judicial selection. The author is analyzing the collegium system. He is saying that this collegium system has some problems. What are the problems? It is opaque. That is, the reason and the merit for the judges who are appointed and selected by this Chief Justice of India, 4 senior most judges, which is making this collegium, is not transparent. The collegium will not tell what is the reason they appoint a judge and what is the reason they don't appoint a judge. And so this is opaque and the people's right to know is denied, is what the author is saying. And the lack of independent scrutiny of judges is also lacking. So here the judges scrutinize themselves. So this is lacking the independent scrutiny of judges. And there is an indirect supervisory power on High Court. As I told you, judges are selected by the collegium. The judges of High Court is also selected by the collegium. The collegium will select the judges and the Chief Justice of High Courts to be appointed. When collegium of Supreme Court is doing such a selection, it indirectly supervises the working of High Courts. This will affect the independence of the High Court from the Supreme Court, is what the author is saying. Thus, this author is an advocate from Madras High Court. He may have a bias towards High Court. So you have to also see the author who is writing this editorial and his perspective of the editorial. So indirect supervisory power in High Court is what this advocate of Madras High Court is criticizing about this collegium system. And the primacy of judiciary in appointment is there. See, when Supreme Court scrapped this 99th constitutional amendment and said that only collegium can appoint, select the judges, it said that primacy of judiciary in appointment is the most basic structure of the constitution. What is this primacy? Only the judiciary will appoint the judges, is what the primacy of judiciary in appointment. But this is in order to protect the autonomy of judiciary or the independence of the judiciary from the executive. Because in NJAC, you have the executive who is also in the process of selecting the judges. This will affect the independence of judiciary. So the author is saying that the Supreme Court said that no, NJAC cannot appoint the judges. It is only the collegium who are only having the judges will appoint the judges. So this will help protect the autonomy of the judiciary, is what the reason said in the 4th judge's case. But this author is saying whether primacy of judiciary is mentioned in the constitution. No, it is not mentioned in the original constitution, is what the author is saying. So whether the Supreme Court is right in saying that the collegium system must be appointing the judges and the primacy of judiciary must be there in the appointment, whether it is right or wrong, the author is questioning. and no mention is there in the constitutional provision. So this you have to understand. And no reforms yet in collegium system, which the Supreme Court promised. This also you have to understand. When in fourth judges cases, when the judiciary actually scrapped this 99th constitutional amendment, they said there is some problem in collegium system. Actually, they accepted. The Supreme Court accepted that there is some problem in the collegium, we will rectify it. So there was a memorandum of procedure which was created in order to bring reforms in this collegium system. So a memorandum of procedure was created to reform this collegium system, but there is no steps taken after that. So this collegium system is still continuing without any reform is what the author is criticizing. A reason of merit and diversity is used without debates. So they are saying this judge is appointed because he is having such merit. And he is from SC, ST, or he is a woman, or he is from this region and that region, and this region or this number of SC, ST population is not being represented. So just because there is a need for a diversity, just because there is something called merit, they are telling that this person has to be appointed as a judge. But there is no proper reason which is given, and we do not know what is the reason for appointment and refusal of appointment of each judges. So this is one scenario you have to understand as a criticism on this collegium system. Going to the next editorial, which is the last editorial of the disease surveillance system for the future. This is important because General Studies 2 has this important topic, government policies and interventions for development in various sectors and issues arising out of the design and implementation. What is the premise? COVID pandemic is the premise. So because this pandemic has struck us, it is now time for disease surveillance system to be prepared for the next pandemic or next epidemic. So this is what the author wants to talk about. What are the points to be noted? He said, epidemiology is an important study which is required in India. Epidemiology is a study and analysis of the distribution, patterns, and determinants of health and disease conditions in defined population. So epidemiology will tell you what is the cause, what is the reason for any diseases. Say, for example, a cholera, a typhoid, and any diseases which are contagious or communicable. Epidemiology and even non-communicable, they will find the reason. They will find they will trace the reason. They will find the patterns. So all this actually will help in the policy making to prevent such a disease or to reduce the impact of this disease is what the author is saying. So epidemiological study is very important for our preparation to any pandemic or epidemic is what the author is saying. It needs systematic collection and timely analysis and dissemination of data on the diseases. So collection of data about the reasons. Say, for example, the author is also giving one example which happened in a foreign country. He said that there was a cholera outbreak, and this cholera outbreak data is very important for this collection. So the author is talking about this cholera, and this cholera spread, which was there in a particular local area, was found because of a tap. So there was a common tap where the tap was providing water for that particular area. And this area was witnessing cases of cholera. So the author, when the particular officers found that this local area is having high number of cholera cases, they found that there is this cholera which is spreading through this water is having this tap water is the source of or the cause for cholera spreading in this particular local area. So this important problem that the cholera, which is a communicable disease, which is waterborne disease, is having. So the tap was actually closed, and then this cholera disease, which was spreading among this population, was reduced. So this important example that the author wanted to give about the importance of disease surveillance system, which will prevent the cases from increasing and also the impact of such diseases. So this epidemiology, which is important for the disease surveillance system, will need systematic collection and timely analysis and dissemination of data on the diseases. So here, when there is a cholera diseases which is having, or even the Nipah virus disease, which recently started coming again in the Kerala, will require systematic collection of data. So a person who was first affected was found in Kerala, which is very good move. So now they have traced the population which came in contact with that particular child, and then they will see they will actually barricade the area, and they will see that no person is coming in or no person is going out, and they will trace the person who already came in contact, and also they will see the prevention is done, and there is proper treatment and testing and treatment is done for the population who came in contact with that particular child. So these systematic collection, timely analysis and dissemination of data on the diseases is very important to reduce the impact or even prevent a disease from happening. And in wake of SARS outbreak in 2004, India actually launched the Integrated Disease Surveillance Project. So we already have this disease surveillance project. Kerala and Maharashtra states could identify 1 in every 6 and 12 infections. But states like Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and Bihar is only able to see very, very low detection. So the disease surveillance system is not properly implemented in many states, is what the author is saying. So there is a need to strengthen this disease surveillance system, is what the author is saying. Pandemic must be a nudge. So pandemic actually should awake the states of Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh to create and strengthen this disease surveillance system, is what the author is saying. A review of the integrated disease surveillance system was actually done in 2015 through a monitoring mission, joint monitoring mission. They conducted the surveillance, the review of this program jointly by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, and World Health Organization. What they found is that there should be an increased financial resource allocation, adequate trained manpower, strengthening labs to test such diseases, and zoonosis, influenza, and vaccine preventable disease surveillance is very, very required comparing to other diseases. So the joint monitoring mission found these 4 important suggestions to actually strengthen this disease surveillance system, which is IDSP in India. What is the way forward? The government resources must be allocated to preventive and promotive health services and disease surveillance. And disease surveillance need to be increased by the union and state government, is what the author is saying. So union and state government must concentrate and actually allocate resources to promotive and preventive health services, is what the author is saying. And the workforce, that is the ASHA workers, the Anganwadi workers, the ANM, that is auxiliary nurse midwives, they have to work in both rural and urban areas, and they have to be trained in disease surveillance and public health actions. And also there are lots of vacancies which have to be filled. So there are vacancies of ASHA workers and all primary health workers. So they have to be filled. These vacancies have to be filled, and they have to be working and trained on disease surveillance, is what the author is saying. The laboratory capacity for COVID-19 developed in last 18 months. That is the lab which is very much required, because they have to test the population which came in contact with that particular person who had the disease, and also they will have to do the sero survey, because sero survey will help in understanding how much the population is have been affected and have become immune to COVID or any other diseases. So sero survey is done to understand something called as herd immunity. What is this herd immunity means? Herd immunity means, say for example, Madurai, Chennai is there. Madurai has a certain population of COVID affected patients, and Chennai also had the population of COVID affected patients. say for example, this COVID affected patients, say for example, only 20% of Madurai people are being affected by COVID. But Chennai has 60% of people who are affected by COVID. So 60% people have become immune. While here it is only 20% of people who has become immune. So here, Chennai, where 60% of people who become immune will not be affected by this COVID. So the COVID will not be spread from this immune population who have been already infected and become immune for this particular disease. So this is called as herd immunity, where large population, when they got affected and they become their antibodies have been generated and they have become immune now. Now for COVID, even if it is affecting them again, they will not have the disease because they are already affected and they got the disease and they now become immune. So this is the herd immunity. This will actually stop the maximum spread of disease to another population, because there is a population which will act as a barrier to further spread of this disease. So this is called herd immunity, which is found using the sero survey. The sero survey actually will test the person whether they have been infected by the COVID before itself, and they have the antibody which will generate immunity against this particular COVID. So they will test this. So this will give us an idea whether the particular population is already infected and got immune of it. So such a sero survey is very, very important. And also the laboratory has to be, say for example, the students are going to the schools. The students have to be tested, and only then they have to be allowed into the schools or any other coaching centers, or even Kingmakers IS Academy. They will be asking students to give their COVID vaccinated cards, and then only they will be allowing them to go for an offline class. So such a scenario where the labs become very important in fighting against the disease. So the laboratory capacity, because capacity of the labs must be increased, because a lab which can only test a person, say for example, 10 persons a day, will not be able to meet the requirements. Say for example, in Kingmakers, say for example, there are 400 students studying. If the lab is only able to test a person 10 persons a day, then there will not be proper offline classes which will happen. So the laboratory capacity has to be increased. So laboratory capacity for COVID-19 will have to be developed. And this development which was done for this COVID have to be improved further. And this have to be repurposed to increase the ability to conduct testing for other public health challenges, not just COVID, but also say, for example, typhoid, dengue, chikungunya, anything else, even Nipah virus. So these infections have to be tested by improvement of this laboratory capacities for the author is saying. The One Health approach, this is very important. What is this One Health approach? You can draw a triangle and say that human, environment, and the animals, their health is interrelated. So their health is interrelated. So this is One Health approach. So this One Health approach you have to talk about, or you can make human here, environment here, animals here, whatever. So this triangle approach is very important because, as you know, our most infectious diseases are zoonotic. What is zoonotic means? It spreads from animal to human. Say, for example, from bat, porcupine, or any animals, they will spread to the humans. So this animal to human spread of diseases is very important. So the health of the animal is also important. The health of the human is also important. And also you have to know that the environment pollution, or the pollution in the environment, say for example, the pollution of the water through the fecal matters actually spread cholera. And the pollution of water through any other viruses or will create problem. Or stagnation of water will actually breed mosquitoes, and that will also create problem. So environment is playing a role in the spread of disease to the human or the animals. So environment also playing important role in the health. So One Health approach in turn means that human, environment, and animal health is very interrelated, and we have to look into a holistic view or comprehensive view of all these three health into picture in order to fight any diseases which is occurring in that particular time and particular region. So that is what One Health approach means. So One Health approach has to be promoted beyond policy discourses and made functional on the ground is what the author is saying. Fifth, strengthening the civil registration and vital statistic systems and medical certification of cause of deaths. This is very important. We have to have a proper registration system. As you all know, in this COVID, there was excess death, which was criticized because there was not proper reporting of the death, and many deaths which was not found a reason for their death were just discarded. So they may be dying due to the oxygen scarcity when they were affected by this COVID, or other reason related to the COVID, but the registration system was not taking account of the reason for their death. So this will affect the policy response, and this will affect the compensation which has to be provided to those affected victims of the particular patients. So these registration system, when it is very faulty or not in proper mode, that will affect the disease surveillance system. So the author is saying we have to have a proper civil registration and vital statistic systems and medical certification of cause of death that will in turn will help us fight against any disease outbreaks. Coordinated actions between the state government and municipal corporation, which is the local government, is important to develop joint action plans and you assume responsibility for public health and disease surveillance. So you have to understand, students, when COVID actually impacted, you have to know there are certain areas which were locked down. Not the entire city was locked down, only important area where the lots of cases were found for lockdown. So local lockdown was there. So these local lockdown in turn needs the municipal corporation to work properly. And the state government must cooperate with this municipal corporation and help to actually localize the region and target the people who were affected and provide proper recourse for them. So this will able to reduce the problem of many populations getting affected with the COVID. So such a scenario in this case of COVID helped, but the same case have to be held for other diseases as well. So state government have to cooperate with this municipal corporation and reduce this public health problem. And this fact of mains I have given here, that these are the points you have to note. Please take a screenshot of it. And now it will help you in taking those facts to your final mains exam. So please ensure that you have all these points, taken screenshot of it, and take these top points, write it at the proper time, at the proper place, and only what is you can actually recall, please write that only. So with that note, thank you, students. I end this particular meeting with that. Thank you for all your support. Please, if you consider this useful, please share it with your friends, and also like, share, and subscribe to this particular initiative. Thank you.